Hello and welcome to the programme. Well, Europe is waiting, but the UK government sources say there will be no Brexit deal before the start of the EU summit. London and Brussels appear to be on the verge of sealing a deal, but UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is struggling to win enough support at home to get it through Parliament. Now, with the crucial summit set to begin, it's no longer clear whether the two sides will reach a deal before Saturday, where Mr Johnson is required to ask Brussels for another extension if there is still no agreement. Well, the major remaining hurdle is the long-standing issue of the border on the island of Ireland. Well, Boris Johnson has been holding urgent talks with his cabinet and with the Northern Irish Democratic Union Party. He needs their support, but the DUP says it won't accept a deal that treats Northern Ireland differently from the rest of the United Kingdom. Well, for more on this, I spoke to our political editor Darren McCaffrey, and he told me what's holding up the deal.
Yeah, no deal tonight, not least of all because they just couldn't get this agreement, essentially, and there is a form of agreement over the line. Not only are Downing Street, Isabel, you have to remember, essentially negotiating with the European Commission here in Brussels, they're also having to negotiate with many Conservative backbenchers, those hardcore Brexiteers, and indeed with the DUP. And there are another 27 EU nations involved in this as well. So many cogs in this story and in this process that, you know what, when it comes to the kind of crunch point, you have to try and align them all in one go. And that tonight has seemingly proven impossible. It doesn't mean, though, that negotiations will not continue and that at some stage in the next 24 to 48 hours that a deal could be done. What are the stumbling blocks in all of this? Well, they come back to what the negotiations have been about all this week. Consent in Northern Ireland, about who gets to decide what Northern Ireland's relationship is with the European Union in the years to come. Is it Stormont, the Northern Irish executive, that hasn't sat for the last 2.5 years? What is the role of the DUP, that Northern Irish political party? Do they have essentially a veto in that process? When it comes to customs, again, how does this complex process work that Northern Ireland essentially remains inside the UK's customs territory, while at the same time de facto inside the EU's customs union? It's never been tried anywhere else in the world before. Can it possibly work? What are the particular details of that? And then also on the future trade agreement between the UK and the rest of the EU. Theresa May made it clear that she wanted to stay pretty close to the European Union when it comes to its rules and regulations. Boris Johnson wants to go in a very different way. He wants to potentially, as Angela Merkel said, become a competitor to the EU. It's something that the national capitals, particularly in Berlin and Paris, have been concerned about. Those are the stumbling blocks. But it's clear, listening to Donald Tusk and to others tonight, that there is essentially an agreement on the table. What's holding it back is that domestic support in Westminster and in Belfast too, that seems to suggest that, yes, they're pretty much on board, but not wholly there. Hence why I say the next 24 to 48 hours could prove quite crucial.
Well, a dual customs system is reportedly part of the Brexit deal that's being negotiated by Boris Johnson, but that's something Theresa May rejected, saying no British Prime Minister could accept. So would the main opposition Labour Party accept this as part of the deal? Well, that's what I asked Labour's MP Stephen Doty when I spoke to him earlier.
I think there are serious concerns on behalf of all of us in the Labour Party, actually not about proposals that avoid a hard border in Ireland and between Ireland and Northern Ireland, but actually in terms of all of the rest of the agreement. There is a suggestion that Boris Johnson wants to take away the level playing field, to refuse to give the guarantees on labour rights, environmental rights, consumer rights, health and safety, so many issues which are crucial to Labour MPs and Labour voters. And I think there's been a lot of attention paid to the issues around Northern Ireland, and rightly so. You know, I don't want to see a hard border return or any threat to peace and stability. But actually, there are all these other issues, and that's why many of the colleagues I've been speaking to tonight, including some of those who wish to see a deal concluded, are very, very sceptical, particularly given that none of us as members of Parliament have seen anything of the legal text or the detail of these agreements. And as was pointed out by your correspondent earlier, it's when the detail is presented and people get to look at that and they see the reality before them, that is influencing then how they actually vote on such a deal.
And in your opinion, is there enough time to get this through by Saturday?
I think I would be very sceptical about that. As I said, many MPs from all ends of the spectrum, not least Labour colleagues, have been saying that they want to see the detail. And you've heard select committee chairs this evening, including Hilary Benn, who of course chairs the Brexit Select Committee, saying they will want to see this and go through it in great detail. I think any attempt to sort of bounce this through on MPs on Saturday, particularly given this actually has to go through a multi-stage process. It's not just the sort of in principle approval of a deal. It's actually the legislation that's required to carry that deal out. And many of us will be wanting to see that legislation published and the clear detail and the ability to go through that. My view is that there is a surefire way to get a deal agreed and through Parliament, and that's to put it back to the British people in a confirmatory vote. I'd be happy, for example, to see a deal that I didn't even agree with going forward to that next stage, as long as the British people got to have a say on that. And I expect there to be hundreds of thousands of people marching in London on Saturday, making that absolutely clear. So even if MPs were to edge something over the line, which I think is a very difficult prospect in itself, that is only the first stage of many in the days and weeks to come. So, we have to wait and see. As you say, there isn't even a deal yet. But if there was a deal, people are going to go over that with a very fine tooth comb.